I never imagined my life would change when a stranger saw my desperate struggle. I still remember the way the wind howled that day, carrying with it the chill of despair that seeped into my bones. I was standing on that crowded street corner, heart racing, palms sweating, fighting back tears. The voices around me blurred into a cacophony of laughter and chatter, leaving me feeling utterly alone. No one noticed my trembling hands, my tight chest, or the lump in my throat that threatened to choke me. It felt like a scene torn from a film, but there I was, the unwilling star, looking at the ground, wishing I could disappear. The world moved on, but I was frozen in my own silent chaos. My little brother, Tommy, had been sick for months. We had exhausted every option, and now I was left standing there, haunted by the weight of 1,000 thoughts. What could I do? Who could help? Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw him. A figure in a long coat, dark hair slipping from under a battered hat. He paused, studying me like I was a puzzle waiting to be solved. I felt his gaze pierce through my despair, igniting something deep within. The crowd swirled around us, a blur of colors and sounds, but in that moment, it was just him and me. My heart raced. He approached. I could feel the air shift, thick with questions and an unnameable tension. "Are you okay?" he asked. Simple words, yet they hung heavy in the air. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just tears. What was it about his voice that cut through my fear? And then he did something unexpected. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. "I think you need this," he said, extending his hand toward me. There was urgency in his eyes, an intensity that made my breath hitch. My fingers brushed the paper as I took it, and a warm sensation spread through me, giving me a flicker of hope amid my despair. But before I could say anything, he turned and simply walked away, vanishing into the crowd. I stood there, confused, clutching the note to my chest. What just happened? Did he really care? I unfolded the paper, my hands shaking, revealing a scribbled number and a name. My mind raced. Who was this man? How did he know what I needed? The world rushed back to me, the noise intensified, the colors brighter. I wanted to find him, to unravel this sudden thread of magic that had been tossed into my life. But he was gone, and all I was left with was a choice: turn away from my pain or follow this mysterious glimmer of hope without knowing where it might lead. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The weight of the paper crumpled in my palm felt heavier than I had anticipated. My immediate thought was to bury it deeper within my jacket pocket, to secure this fleeting moment of unexpected kindness away from prying eyes. But there was an urge I couldn't ignore, a spark that urged me to unfold it once more, to let my eyes trace over the letters again and drink in the sliver of salvation they represented. Tommy was in my mind, a constant shadow that loomed larger each day. His laughter, once so rich and full, had become quieter over the months. The vibrant energy he exuded, now reduced to whispers and feeble attempts at playing games that once felt so effortless for him. I could almost hear him slowly fading, and each passing day without improvement cleaved deeper into my heart, two parts of me struggling against each other, one yearning to embrace hope, the other clinging fiercely to despair. As I stood there, the cacophony of life continued on without me. I felt an irresistible urge to reach out, to find out who this stranger was, and whether he could truly help. But despair whispered sweet nothings, conjuring images of failure, of placing my hopes in the hands of a ghost. Yet, I couldn't dispel the flicker of warmth ignited by his simple act. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage I knew I needed. The world around me seemed to swell and recede in a rhythm that matched the thudding of my heart. People passed by, lost in their own lives, seemingly unaware that I was teetering on the brink of something monumental. I scanned faces, but no one resembled the man in the hat. He had become a phantom, yet his presence felt omnipresent as I held the paper close to my chest, my lifeline oddly pulsating with promise. When I finally found myself standing in front of the neon-lit cafe that continued to flicker in my mind, I hesitated. A snippet of conversation caught my attention as I pushed the door ajar. Two women were laughing over steaming mugs, the air filled with a scent I recognized as hope mixed with caffeine and warmth. My heart danced momentarily, but a wave of doubt crashed over me. What if this was all a mistake? What if the call led to another dead end, another moment of letting myself down? I could almost hear Tommy's voice, encouraging me to take the chance. To try. And after all he had endured, I owed it to him to at least explore this possibility. That I stepped inside, the warmth enveloping me like a hug. I took a seat by the window, the sunlight pouring in around me, illuminating the crumpled note resting on the table. With a small sigh, I dialed the number, my hands trembling against the cool plastic of my phone. Each ring felt like an eternity, stretching out in front of me with the weight of my heart's every hope and fear. Just as I began to lose faith, a voice crackled through. Hello. Hi, I stammered, unsure how to even begin. I got your number from someone. My voice was barely a whisper, the sound swallowed by the ambience of the cafe. Who is this? The voice asked, sharp yet curious. I'm sorry. I don't know how to explain. I paused, feeling a twist of vulnerability unfurl. I'm trying to help my brother. He's sick, and I don't know what to do. I can help, he replied, and his tone instantly shifted. Can you meet tonight? Before I could respond, he continued, I know what you're going through. Trust might's worth it. His words resonated through the static of my uncertainty, entwining with the urgent desperation I felt inside. Where? I found myself asking before I even processed the meaning of that leap. Meet me at the park by the old oak. 8 p.m. Bring your brother. Then, silence. The line went dead. My heart raced as I clutched my phone, the remnants of the conversation reverberating in my mind. There was something in his voice, a tone that made me feel understood rather than judged. But the weight of the request hung heavy. My mind spiraled with questions. Who was this man? Did he really know what we were going through? As I left the cafe, the memory of his face began to blur. The stranger had cast a light into my darkness, yet I couldn't ignore the nagging fear that sometimes, hope could lead to more heartache. The warmth I had felt had been a flicker, and nights spent in uncertainty were waiting ahead like shadows creeping closer with every passing moment. But Tommy needed me to try, and in the depths of that truth, hope ignited once more, flickering but bright enough to lean on. I rushed home, the sun setting behind me, a million thoughts racing through my mind. I pushed open the door to our small apartment, the air heavy with both nostalgia and worry. As I made my way to Tommy's room, I found him sprawled on the bed, sketching an incomplete drawing. He looked up, eyes wide with an innocent cheer that struck a harsh contrast to my heavy heart. Did you get help? He asked, hope shimmering in his voice. I knelt beside him, casting a shadow over his artwork, and took a breath. I might have, I said carefully, deciding what to reveal. But just then, an unexpected commotion came from the living room, cutting through our fragile moment. The door swung open with a bang, and standing there in disbelief was our mother, her expression a mix of confusion and urgency. You won't believe who's here. My heart stopped as she stepped aside, revealing a familiar figure in the Shadowsa vision I hadn't seen in years, a face that stirred emotions I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. The past and present collided, and the threads of my life tightened around me like a noose, leaving me gasping for air as the ghost of old wounds surged, demanding their place in my heart. The figure stepped into the light, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Standing there, framed by the doorway, was my father. Time appeared to warp around his presence. He looked older, with faint lines tracing the path of his absence across his face, but his eyes gleamed with a mix of uncertain joy and longing. Hey, kid, he said, his voice shaky, as if he were afraid I'd vanish if he spoke too loudly. "Why are you here?" The words burst from me before I could stop them. I felt the warmth of the moment evaporating, replaced by a chill that settled deep within my bones. "I came to see how you two were doing," he replied, glancing nervously at my mother, who stood stiff in the hallway, like a deer caught in the headlights of a speeding car. Tommy, who had been observing our tense exchange, whispered, "Is Dad back for good?" I turned to him, my mind racing back to the broken promises and hollow apologies the year spent wondering why the man who was supposed to guide me had disappeared. Anger bubbled up inside of me, yet part of me yearned for the comfort of resolution. "Are you really back?" I asked, the doubt punctuating my words like the jagged edges of an unfinished puzzle. "Look, I know I messed up," he said, the sorrow in his voice deepening. "But I want to make it right." Tommy's innocent gaze collided with the anguish etched in my own heart. "You always said family was important, right?" he ventured. "Then why did you go away?" "Tommy, let's not," I began, trying to steer the conversation away from treacherous waters, but my brother's trusting nature didn't allow for that. "It's okay, kiddo," Dad interjected, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "I'm sorry. I really am. I should have never left, especially with everything else going on with you getting sick." That word struck me like a physical blow, echoing painfully in the silence that followed. My brother, sick. The weight of Tommy's health loomed as a specter, an emotional abyss that pressed against our family dynamics. "Do you think you can just waltz back in like it's nothing?" I demanded, a mix of betrayal and hurt spilling out. "Do you have any idea how hard it's been for us?" "Believe me, I know," Dad replied, the desperation in his voice palpable. "I've seen your mother's struggle. I know about Tommy's health. I can help if you let me back into your lives." My heart waged war against itself. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to drive him out of our lives forever, while another part ached for reconciliation, for the possibility of a family restored. I glanced at Tommy, who was caught between confusion and hope, and I felt a surge of protectiveness. "Help?" I echoed, bitterness creeping into my tone. "What do you know about helping? You left us when we needed you the most." His eyes softened, a mix of regret and remorse pouring out. "I was wrong," he said softly. "I thought leaving would be better for all of us, but it only made things worse." As I considered his words, the evening light dimmed, wrapping our fragile moment in hues of twilight. A breath felt like a weight in my chest, and I fought to shake off the memories, the ones of me waiting for him to return, always on the precipice of disappointment. "Look, I'm here now," he insisted. "I want to contribute. I can help find more options for Tommy's treatment. I've heard stories there's a possibility." "Don't," I interrupted, filled with incredulity. "You don't get to come back and promise a miracle. You don't even know what we've been through." Tommy, seeking reassurance in my anger, shifted uncomfortably, his face a mask of unpredictability. I longed to shield him from this conversation, this man who had broken so many promises before. "That I am asking for a chance," Dad said, vulnerability spilling over. "Just one chance to make amends. To see if we can be a family again." The tension in the room thickened, a web of uncertainty wrapping around us. I ached for the man I used to know, the one who could offer warmth on the coldest of nights, yet he was overshadowed by the fear of being let down again. I trailed off, battling the swelling tide of emotions as the weight of my decision hung heavily in the air. Before I could respond, the phone in my pocket chimed, jolting me from my thoughts. My heart raced as I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text message from the stranger resonated deeply. "Are you coming? Remember, it's your brother who needs you." Caught between worlds, the warmth of hope and the chill of old wounds, I felt myself spiraling. There were two paths lying before me, and I had to choose, but the weight of the moment felt unbearable. "That I can't do this now," I finally said, more to myself than anyone else. I turned back to Tommy, whose face was laced with disappointment, then to my father, whose expression mirrored my turmoil. "I need time." With that, I walked beyond the shattered fragments of a vulnerable reunion into the sound of the night creeping towards a quiet yearning, my heart pounding as I ventured uncertainly into the fading light. I had promised Tommy I'd find him hope, yet here I was, leaving a lifetime of confusion unresolved as I faced the darkness of the park ahead. As I stepped out into the cool evening, I felt a surge of regret mingle with determination. The stranger awaited by the oak, and with Tommy's future marginalized in the balance, I had to decide how far I was willing to go to keep hope alive, not just for him, but for myself too. The chill of the night air wrapped around me like a shroud as I moved deeper into the park, each step a battleground between resolve and uncertainty. The world seemed to stand still, the distant sounds of laughter and chatter fading into the background, leaving only my thoughts echoing in the silence. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the storm raging inside me, yet every inhalation felt heavy with the weight of my decisions, the remnants of the conversations echoing in my mind. The oak tree stood tall at the park center, its branches reaching toward the heavens, as if it too sought solace from the turmoil below. The stranger was already there, leaning against the rough trunk, his face illuminated by the faint glow of a street lamp. As I approached, he straightened up, a knowing look in his eyes that seemed to pierce through my facade. "You came," he said, his voice soothing, yet laced with an urgency that pulled at my heart. "I was worried you wouldn't." I shrugged, the motion dismissive and heavy all at once. "You said you knew about Tommy. I thought maybe you could help." His expression shifted, something resembling sympathy crossed his features. "I'm not here to pressure you. I only want to share what I've learned from those who've faced similar struggles." That I hesitated. "Like what? What could you possibly know about my brother's situation?" Anger simmered beneath my words, a protective instinct laced in each syllable. "More than you think," he replied gently. "I work with families who face health crises every day. I see the ways they navigate the system, the options available that go beyond the typical routes. It's important to be informed, to explore every avenue." A flicker of hope ignited in my gut, but I quickly stamped it down. "Why do you care? Why should I trust you?" "Because I've been where you are," he said, voice steady, yet filled with an unmistakable vulnerability. "My sister fought a battle no one should have to fight, and I'd give anything for more time, more options, anything that could have helped her." My heart twisted at his confession, an unexpected bond swelling between us. The loss reflected in his gaze mirrored my own fears for Tommy. "I'm afraid," I admitted, feeling the weight of my vulnerability slip through my guarded armor. "You're not alone in this," he reassured me, stepping closer, his intensity softening into earnestness. "Sometimes, hope comes from unexpected places. All I'm asking is for you to open your mind to the possibilities." As he spoke, I envisioned Tommy, his small frame fighting against the shadows of sickness, the laughter we shared turning into fading memories against the backdrop of every hospital visit and worried night. I could feel the urge to protect him battling against the potential of what the stranger offered. "You might find something that works for him," the stranger continued. "A clinical trial, alternative treatments, anything that could help him regain his strength. Why should I believe you?" I said, my voice steady, but my heart fluttering with conflicting desires. "What if it leads to more pain?" "Pain is part of the journey," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "But so is hope. You can't shield yourself or him from what comes next by standing still." The air between us seemed to thrum with the weight of his words, coaxing out the buried wish for my brother's recovery. "What do I need to do?" I asked, the question escaping as a desperate whisper. "Start with gathering information. The more you know, the more you can help him. I can guide you through this process, share resources, connect you with specialists." Taking a deep breath, I rebuffed my fears and uncertainty. My family was crumbling, and the thought of losing Tommy unlatched a reservoir of pain I had just begun grappling with. "Where do we begin?" The stranger smiled, and for the first time, he seemed less like a figure out of nowhere and more like an ally walking beside me toward uncharted territory. "I'll send you everything I have. But more importantly, you can't face this alone. You need to talk to your mother, let her into this process, too. She deserves to share in the hope." That I swallowed hard, each word intertwining with the earlier emotions tied to my father's return: betrayal, fear, longing. "My mom, she has her own battles, that's why she needs you," he encouraged gently. You can be strong together, support one another. And your father too. I know your trust has been shattered, but perhaps his intentions are genuine. I gnashed my teeth at the thought, my heart still resisting the idea of my father being part of this journey. But deep inside, something shifted. The idea of collaboration flickered like a candle's flame in the dark. Perhaps it wasn't just about healing Tommy, but mending the fragments of our family too. Tell me what to do, I said, purpose giving weight to my words rather than defeat. Just then, my phone buzzed insistently, the vibration jolting me back to the present. I glanced down, feeling my heart drop as I saw the text read, "We need to talk now." It's about Tommy. What is it? The stranger raised an eyebrow, catching the tension etched across my face. I don't know, I whispered, swallowed by dread. Something urgent had shifted in the air, and the unease gnawed at my stomach. But I have to go. Okay, he replied thoughtfully, grounding his voice. Just remember, you don't have to navigate this alone. Whatever it is, you can face it, and we can find the support you need. With a nod, I turned to run back through the park, the weight of my choices still pressing upon me, but somehow, I carried a flicker of hope ignited by the stranger's steadiness. As I stepped back into the embrace of the fading light, I couldn't escape the sensation that things were about to shift, and that shift could very well lead us toward a future teetering on the edge of hope or despair. I had no way of knowing if I was walking toward salvation or heartbreak, but with each heartbeat, I felt the stakes heighten, the story shifting beneath my feet. The sudden urgency of that message gnawed at me like a phantom pain. My heart raced as I sprinted back through the park, each tree casting long shadows that swayed with ominous certainty. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter ringing from the nearby playground, a stark contrast to the gravity of my own thoughts. Please let it not be bad news, I whispered under my breath, my palms clammy as I clutched my phone tightly. Clarity was elusive, and the air hung thick with trepidation. The streetlights blinked above me, an unmovable reminder of the growing darkness around me. As I neared my mother's car, parked just outside the entrance to the park, I caught sight of her silhouette, her figure tense against the headlights. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of emotions: fear, anxiety, and a flicker of hope. You got my message, she stated, her voice trembling slightly despite her effort to maintain composure. What's going on? Is Tommy okay? The desperate edge in my tone betrayed the very resolve I had only just begun to muster. Not really, she replied softly, her voice breaking as she spoke the words that felt like shattering glass. The doctor called. They want to adjust his treatment plan. That a lump formed in my throat. What does that mean? His body isn't responding as they hope to the current medications. They're suggesting a more aggressive approach. Her words tumbled out like stones, heavy and unyielding. I don't know if I can. The mentions of more aggressive churned my stomach. A veil of uncertainty plunged me deeper into a well of fear. All the hope I had grabbed onto moments ago felt precarious, slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. When do we have to decide? Soon, she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm terrified, and I know you are too. But I need to know what you think. We can't just go along with what they suggest without understanding all our options. A wave of guilt washed over me, the weight of my earlier encounter with the stranger pressing in on me like a vice. I had wanted to reach for hope, but now it felt as though darkness was the only companion left on this treacherous journey. Did you talk to Dad? The words slipped from my lips, the memory of our fractured family colliding with the very real threat we now faced. That I tried. He wants to help, but she faltered, and I saw the conflict rise within her. Can we really trust him again after everything? There was a long pause, a moment where the silence stretched taut like the strings of a bow. Maybe, I finally said, my voice steadying in the face of my own uncertainty. Maybe we have to. For Tommy, the thought of my father being a part of this decision made bile rise in my throat, yet the flicker of hope that had ignited earlier nudged at the corners of my mind. Perhaps letting him in meant letting go of some of the burdens I had been carrying alone. We can't ignore any available options. It's time to face this together. My mother nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek as restlessness flared in her eyes. "You're right. We need to talk to the doctor, possibly start reaching out to some specialists." But still, amidst our determination to construct a path forward, my heart ached with dread. As I fished out my phone to text the stranger, seeking any insights he could provide, the screen lit up once more, an incoming call disrupting the tension hanging in the air. It was my father. My breath hitched, apprehension drawing tight in my chest. "What do I do?" I whispered, the weight of the decision weighing heavily. "Answer it. We need all hands on deck. If he truly wants to help Tommy, we can't shut him out," my mother urged, both a plea and a rallying cry. With an exhale of resolve, I swiped to answer, my heart drumming an erratic rhythm of uncertainty. "Hello, hey, I got your mom's message," my father's voice crackled through the receiver, a subtle hesitance threading his words. "I know it's been a while, and I don't expect forgiveness or anything. But I want to be there for both of you, for Tommy." "Why now?" I interrupted, hurt and skepticism surfacing like freshly broken soil. "After everything?" "Because I see what's at stake. I want to help you navigate this," he insisted, determination bleeding through the hesitation. "We don't have to do this alone. I'm willing to listen to whatever options you explore." I just want. My heart thudded heavily. There he was, reaching for a connection I had deemed broken beyond repair. As I glanced at my mother, her gaze was locked on mine, a silent encouragement that I need to talk to Mom, I finally stated, pausing to draw in breath. "Well, consider your input, but you have to be honest with us. No more secrets, okay? We need to trust you." "I understand. No more secrets," he promised, his voice softening with an unguarded honesty that was both disarming and terrifying. As I hung up, an unexpected wave of tumultuous emotions washed over me. It was unfamiliar and unsettling, that hope he offered counterbalanced by the shadows of past disappointments. "Should we call the doctor now?" my mother asked after a moment, her voice trembling with readiness yet edged with hesitation. "Yeah," I replied, the frailty of our path stretching ahead. But first I hesitated, contemplating the stranger's words, the need to gather information, to become navigators of this dark sea together, as a family, felt pivotal. As we pulled together, the thought hovered like a flickering candle in a storm, uncertain yet resilient. The phone call with my father had opened a door I'd thought permanently closed, and I could only hope it would lead to a safer harbor, and in that new, mingled sense of hope and anxiety, something dark loomed just beyond our horizon, ready to test our resolve. As I reached for the doctor's number, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far more complicated, potentially heartbreaking. The stakes had never felt higher, and with every heartbeat, I was painfully aware that the next revelation could either bind us closer or tear us apart. The ringing of the phone seemed to echo in my ears as we awaited the doctor's response. My anxiety spiraled, each sound amplifying the unease thrumming beneath my skin. My mother stood by my side, her fingers intertwined with mine, grounding us both in the tempest of uncertainty. When the receptionist finally answered, her cheerful demeanor felt out of place against the gravity of our situation. "Hello. How may I assist you today?" "We need to speak with Dr. Lee about Tommy's treatment plan," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's urgent." "Of course. Let me check his schedule." The brief silence felt like an eternity, and during those precious seconds, my mind wandered back to thoughts of my brother. His laughter, once a bright melody in our home, had been replaced by the heavy silence that now echoed through our once vibrant lives. A moment later, the receptionist returned, her tone now a bit more subdued. "Dr. Lee is available in 30 minutes. Would you like me to schedule the appointment?" "Yes, please," I answered, trying to mask my racing heart with calm. As I hung up, the weight of our reality settled around us, and I could feel the tension tighten in my mother's grip. 30 minutes, she breathed, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and impatience. "We need some time to collect our thoughts, then. We can't go in there unprepared." "Right," I said, hating the fact that our hope hinged not only on the doctor's advice but also on the emotional turmoil pooling between my mother and me. "Let's write down our questions. We need to be clear about what we want to ask. That we pulled out a notepad, our fingers brushing against one another as we scribbled down bullet points. Each question became a lifeline, tethering us to our resolve. But every moment spent writing was also a painful reminder of what was at stake, a flash of Tommy's earnest eyes rekindling a spark of determination within me, yet, as the clock ticked down, I felt a sense of dread creeping in. What if Dr. Lee suggested something we couldn't bear? What if his recommendations pushed us further apart? Just when I started to spiral again, a gentle knock broke my reverie. It was Mrs. Ramirez, our neighbor and a friend. She'd been a familiar presence since we were kids, exceptional in her ability to comfort with her warm smile and wise eyes. "Hey, I brought over some cookies," she said, holding out a plate that gleamed under the streetlight. "I thought you might like a little something to munch on." "Thank you," I breathed, almost surprised by the pause in my whirlwind of thoughts. I didn't want to reflect on the bittersweet taste of the cookie, sweetness becoming a sharp counterpoint to the sourness gripping my heart, but her kindness broke through, just enough to shift our mood. As we sat at the table, nibbling on the soft cookies, I could feel the warmth of her presence enveloping us. "How's Tommy?" she asked, her voice soft and laced with care. It was then that I realized how hard it was to answer that question. "He's not doing great. We're meeting with his doctor to discuss some treatment changes." Mrs. Ramirez's expression shifted to one of deep concern. "I'm so sorry. If you need anything at all, I'm just next door. You can count on me." The depth of her sincerity radiated through the room, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of hope. We weren't entirely alone, there were people who cared, people who would stand beside us. In that instant, I felt a surge of gratitude and resilience, extra strength flowing through me. "Thank you," my mother managed, her voice tight with emotion. "That means more than I can say." After a while, Mrs. Ramirez reluctantly excused herself, taking with her the lingering brightness of that simple gesture. Though her presence was small, it reminded us that kindness could exist even in dark times. As the minutes dwindled before our meeting with the doctor, a tension hung thick in the air, heavy with the unsaid. I looked at my mother, and we both nodded. It was time to confront the unknown, whatever it might hold. Arriving at the clinic felt like stepping into the mouth of a beast. The soft buzz of fluorescent lights felt overwhelming, the silence punctuated only by the soft shuffle of nurses and the occasional quiet cough. I could feel my pulse quicken, a steady thrum of fear intertwining with the small spark of hope ignited just moments before. When Dr. Lee finally walked into the room, the weight of his presence filled the space. His eyes were kind, but the shadows beneath them hinted at the difficult conversations that were often part of his days. "Thank you both for coming in," he greeted, steel underlining his gentle words. The heaviness returned, a reminder that his next words would either solidify our resolve or pull us apart. "That I understand that there have been concerns regarding Tommy's current treatment," he began, settling in his chair across from us, his demeanor professional yet compassionate. "I want to lay out our options as thoroughly as possible." As he spoke, every word felt like a stone stacking upon my chest. My mother scribbled fervently, capturing every detail as I drowned in a mixture of desperation and hope. But just as the meeting took a turn toward outlining the various paths we could pursue, a sharp knock interrupted us. The door swung open, and in stepped a figure I hadn't expected, a stranger from my past, a shadow cast long before this dark chapter began. "Excuse me, I need to speak with you," the newcomer said, catching the doctor off guard. My heart plunged as the familiarity of the face began to sift through the haze of my muddled thoughts. The tension in the air tangibly shifted, a silence wrapping around us like a blanket drawn too tightly. I could feel the world tilting slightly, the emotional cliff into which we'd all gathered looming just ahead. "Who are you?" I asked, voice trembling, the past resurfacing to confront me in this already fragile moment. Their gaze locked onto mine, and in that instant, the dread that coursed through me was matched only by the undeniable emotion in their eyes, a flicker of recognition poised to reignite old torments while cradling the weight of what this meeting might mean for Tommy, for all of us. The shock reverberated through me as I stared at the figure standing there with the air of someone both known and unknown, a specter of my past suddenly summoned into the present. Their eyes, quiet yet stormy, bore a history I had long buried away, threads of anguish entwined with a plea that sent chills racing down my spine. Please, they said, voice trembling. I just need a moment. Dr. Lee looked back and forth between us, confusion drawn across his face, while my mother tightened her grip on my hand, an anchor in this whirlwind of emotions. I could see that her heart was racing, far more perceptibly than my own throbbing pulse. What do you want? I managed to ask, my voice low and unsteady, trembling between fear and a surge of unprocessed feelings. I know this is a lot, the person said, their tone dipping into a mixture of desperation and urgency. But what I have to say, it's important. It's about Tommy. The name struck like lightning, illuminating the darkness that cloaked the weight of our lives. What do you know about Tommy? I demanded, voice hardening even as I felt the desperate flicker of curiosity leaping to the forefront. They cleared their throat, and for a moment, the room's charged silence made it feel like we were suspended in a moment between reality and a dream. They paused, collecting their thoughts while the weight of the moment hung thick. I'm someone who used to know him before the illness. Moments shifted as the recognition dawned like a pale morning sun breaking through a long stretch of night. I grabbed hold of the edge of the desk for support, feelings of betrayal and longing wrestling for dominance. You know him? How? The question spilled out before I could guard it, the vulnerability of my voice betraying the fierce instincts begging me to shut this door tight. Dr. Lee watched us, assessing the unexpected turmoil while maintaining a measured presence. I was in the same group therapy sessions as him, the stranger admitted, their voice thickening with memories. I promised him I would keep in touch, to support him. When I heard about his health deteriorating, I felt I had to reach out. Support? I repeated, incredulous. Support how? By wandering in here unannounced. And now, what? You believe you can just waltz back into his life? As anger flared within me, I felt my mother tense, uncertain whether to intervene or allow the storm to unfold. Please, they begged. There's something I need to tell you, something about his treatment back then. I thought it might help. Dr. Lee shifted uneasily, clearly out of his depth. Perhaps we can reschedule this conversation for later. No. I snapped, the fire igniting more than just anger. It was a visceral defense of everything Tommy had become, fighting fiercely for the fragments of him that still held sway over my heart. If you have something to say, say it. Now. The stranger met my gaze, the pain in their eyes casting shadows deeper than my own fears. Tommy was part of a trial, one that explored alternative treatments. It didn't go through, but it did show promise, and I think it could still be viable. I have contacts, people who could help. My mother gasped, her breath a soft betrayal of hope. What do you know? I pressed, trying to grasp the possibilities slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. What trial? Where? This isn't a game. If you're lying, no. I swear, I'm not. I'm here because I knew what he wanted, what he hoped for, they whispered, voice breaking. He talked about you all the time. I wanted to come, he wanted me to come. To be there for you when he could not. The impact of their admission reverberated through me. It was like ripping open a wound only to find wildflowers tucked deep within beauty entwined with anguish. A memory flashed, Tommy, laughing about his dreams, envisioning a brighter future, a lighter path. If there was a chance that something from his past could reach him now for a fleeting moment, a fragile thread of hope wove its way into the tapestry of despair. I could feel my mother's eyes search mine, silently urging me to consider this stranger's words. Dr. Lee cleared his throat, finally reasserting his profession's role in our unfolding drama. Let's take a step back and process. I need to assess whether this is truly a viable option moving forward. No. I shouted again, frustration spilling from within me. You don't understand, this isn't just about options anymore. It's about Tommy. It's about family. The stranger stepped closer, passionate determination emerging from their vulnerability, pushing the emotional weight to another level. Then let me help. Let me be part of this. I believe I can connect you with people who can bring in the treatments Tommy truly deserves. A flicker of hope intensified a daring ember managed to outshine the darkness enveloping us all. But alongside that hope simmered fear, the fear that accepting their offer might shift the course of our struggle in ways I couldn't predict. Yet before I had the chance to respond, the door swung open once more. The receptionist peered in, looking bewildered, her face pale. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a report of a missing patient. The police are here," and that whirling notification spiraled us into chaos, and in a flurry of uncertainty, the strangeness of the moment intertwined with the urgency of the visit. My heart raced, the emotional cliff growing steeper, darker. Just when I thought I glimpsed the horizon, it became obscured. "What missing patient?" I demanded, fear flooding my voice as both the stranger and Dr. Lee exchanged anxious glances. "Tommy." My mother's voice trembled, panic igniting her words. "Is Tommy missing?" The space cracked with uncertainty, threatening to swallow us whole as reality spiraled, ready to hinge on the impossible choice of whether to trust a stranger or grapple with the deeper turmoil about to be unveiled, one that could make or break the fabric of our existence. The air hummed with agitation, pressing against my chest as the receptionist retreated just enough to let the fear and confusion swirl. "Tommy missing?" The question echoed within me, heavy as the weight of all our unspoken words and unrealized hopes crashed together in a dissonant cacophony. "Is it true?" My mother's silence was shattered by desperation. "What do you mean Tommy is missing?" She was on her feet now, gripping my arm as if the pressure alone could hold us together against the tide of uncertainty. Dr. Lee turned to face us, his expression a mixture of concern and caution. "Let's not jump to conclusions. There could be many explanations," he interjected, but he grasped my shoulder in an almost fatherly way, grounding me when I felt myself slipping. That I exhaled sharply, suppressing the urge to scream. "No. There can't be an explanation for he was supposed to be here." The idea of Tommy slipping through the cracks again felt insurmountable, a loss too profound to endure. My hands shook as I fought against the impending waves of panic. "Maybe he just stepped out." The stranger's voice trembled, every inch of their being resonating with the same anguish that churned within me. "Sometimes patients need space." They might have felt overwhelmed and stop. I interjected, the starkness of my voice slicing through the void. "You don't understand. Tommy wouldn't just disappear. Not again. Not like this." The memories rushed back, flooding my heart with images of laughter echoing through our home, the warmth of his hand over mine, and the promises of tomorrow that we trusted would come to pass. But the reality was a chasm away, and the fear of losing him again clawed at my insides. "Let's remain calm," Dr. Lee urged, his voice steady but strained, as if he were trying to hold together the fraying edges of our fragile reality. "I'll contact the staff, find out what's going on. We need to keep our heads. If Tommy is missing, we will look for him, but how?" I felt my voice rise, trembling on the verge of breaking. "How do we look for someone who's already lost?" "Together." "Well, look for him together," the stranger said softly, stepping toward me with an outstretched hand, a gesture mingling empathy and urgency. "I still want to help. Whatever it takes." My heart constricted, caught between the fragile emerging hope and the impending darkness of uncertainty. Could I trust this person? Could I afford to let anyone in whom I barely knew? But the answer loomed over me like a storm cloud. This was Tommy's life at stake. "Let's create a plan," Dr. Lee said, a breath of authority slicing through the chaos. "Well, talk to the police, gather information. We need to act fast." The thrumming in my chest had shifted, adrenaline coursed through my veins, dimming the cacophony of fear. Maybe taking action could shift our fate, draw me closer to Tommy even in this moment of vulnerability. Before I could grasp the full implications of what lay ahead, the emergency room doors burst open and a pair of officers strode in, faces drawn tight, all business. "Who's the family member of Thomas Rivera?" they called out, scanning the room until their eyes latched fiercely on me. I replied, forcing my voice steady. But the wholeness of my spirit felt a fragile illusion, teetering on the brink. "What's going on?" The officer stepped closer, his eyes softening just enough to denote understanding. We're just trying to gather details about his last known location. We heard from the staff he left the unit without authorization, but he wasn't supposed to be alone. My voice rang out like a bell in the silence, drawing attention from everyone in the room. He was overdosing needed care. Where is he? The officer sighed, flipping open a notepad, regret etched in the lines on his face. That's what we need to find out. We were just called in. How long has he been missing? As the situation unfolded, I felt the stranger's presence behind me, an anchor in the rising tide of my emotions. They stood there, shoulders squared, and when I dared to meet their eyes again, I found a promise of unwavering support lurking behind the storm. Dr. Lee joined us, whispering a few urgent words to the officers, and then turned back to me with resolve. Well, fight for him. We will not be passive in this situation, we will take action. Yet even as I clung to the hope woven in Dr. Lee's assertion, another wave of dread crested within me. What if we never found Tommy? What if every attempt led us deeper into a labyrinth with no exit? Suddenly, the emotions swirling inside me clamored for release, claws of anguish scratching at the back of my throat. I turned, searching for comfort in my mother's eyes. The moment our gazes met, I saw it reflected fear, love, and an unbreakable connection destined to be tested. Please let me help. The stranger's plea resonated like a distant echo tugging at my heart. I need to be involved. I feel that this is my chance to make things right for him, for you. I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach twisting. Decisively, I nodded, if only to reassure myself that I was still capable of making decisions amidst the chaos swirling around us. Okay. Just help me find him. Please, that's all I want. Their voice softened to an intimate whisper, filled with raw emotion. But the shadows of doubt still hung between us like a thick fog, especially as an impending sense of foreboding began to close in. As the officers gathered more details, I felt the world shrink around me, focusing on the mission ahead, yet it also expanded into a future I feared to confront. When the officers started taking my information, I allowed myself just a beat to breathe, to take stock of what I could still control, but before I processed my next steps, we caught sight of a flash echoing through the waiting area, figure striding into the room, wild-eyed and frantic. My heart dropped as recognition hit me like a tidal wave, a maelstrom of emotions crashing against my fragile resolve. It was another familiar face, one I hadn't expected to see here. My heart raced as pieces of a larger puzzle began to flood in, crackling like live wires in the vast unknown. With this new arrival came questions I had no answers for, stakes I couldn't begin to calculate, and in that charged silence, I stood at a precipice, terror straining against determination. Whatever truth lay ahead would cut deeper than any blade. I just hoped when the dust finally settled, we would still stand together, united against the shadows that threatened to envelop us. The tension in the room thickened as the figure moved closer, my heart hammering against my ribs with an unsettling rhythm. The shock on my face must have mirrored the mixture of disbelief and recognition that coursed through my blood. It was Mia, Tommy's estranged sister, her eyes wide with uncertainty and fear, the very embodiment of chaos. Jordan. She choked out, her voice breaking as though it had fought through endless barriers to reach me. What happened? I heard before she could finish. I felt the world around me bend and stretch, twisting into a blur of sounds and colors. The very essence of my reality changed, shifting painfully as old scars began to sting anew. Mia. I croaked. What are you doing here? I came as soon as I heard about Tommy. I had to know. She stepped closer, wringing her hands together as if trying to rinse away the anxiety pooling between us. Her gaze flickered to my mother and Dr. Lee, her discomfort at the sight of them was palpable. Where is he? What's wrong? But in this moment, it felt as if every word, every question was just another brick added to the wall that separated us. He's gone, I managed to whisper, a trembling acknowledgement of the fear that was now our shared language. He's missing. The weight of the words hung in the air like a shroud. Mia's expression contorted with pain, eyes glossing over as she processed the reality, but there was something else, frustration, anger simmering beneath the surface. Why didn't you call me earlier? He's my brother too. I didn't even know he was in the hospital. because you left us. My voice cut out, sharper than I intended. You weren't there for him when he needed you the most. Why should you stop? Barked my mother, her voice hoarse yet ironclad. The atmosphere shifted, bristling with unspoken conflicts, family wounds laid bare in this agonizing moment. This is not the time for blame. We need to focus on finding Tommy. Mia's face fell, almost shyly embracing the accusation with a poorly veiled reluctance. Yet, I could see her resolve harden, the flicker of a fight igniting. I want to help, I'll do whatever it takes, she replied, determination threading through her voice. Do you even know how to help? I shot back, disbelief lacing my tone. I hated how defensive I felt, how desperately I wanted to shield Tommy from further hurt, yet here we were, a growing tension between our fractured family that I may not know how to help, but I know he deserves to be found. We can't just sit here, her voice trembled, but there was earnestness shining in her eyes. Stepping toward me, she reached for my arm with a gentleness that surprised us both. Let's do this together. Doctor Lee observed the shifting dynamic, his expression a careful blend of neutrality and concern. Mia, do you have any idea where he could have gone? I don't know. The last time I spoke with him, he said he was feeling overwhelmed by everything. A hint of guilt punctuated her voice, sorrow woven into the fabric of her statements. He struggled so much, I thought had finally hit rock bottom, but I never imagined he could slip away like this. Her vulnerability ignited in me a flicker of empathy, bringing the first crack in the wall we'd constructed between us. Then let's follow the threads of his life, Dr. Lee interjected, his calm authority guiding us. What are the places he often goes, the people he connects with? Who else could help? As the series of questions rushed forward, propelled by emotion and urgency, Mia and I exchanged a glance that spoke of potential reconciliation, a shared purpose forged in the crucible of our love for Tommy. Amidst a storm of pain, there was a small glimmer of hope, something that flickered to life within me. Even if fragile, his friend she has some from the support group he'd go to. If he was trying to escape, I trailed off, as the realization hit me like a wave of cold water. We need to start there, the police can help reach out to them, Dr. Lee insisted, rallying our fragmented energy. Let's give them a list. Just then, a commotion erupted from the waiting area, confused murmur of voices. An officer came in, breathless and wild-eyed, the door swinging behind him like a portal to troubling news. We have a lead. A sighting near a diner on Maple Street. My breath caught, the adrenaline surging through me stronger than before. That's near where he usually goes after group meetings. Panic mixed with a burgeoning hope. Let's go, Mia urged, her earlier animosity dissolving into steadfast resolve. The tension unraveled, replaced by a shared understanding. If he needs help, we can reach him. As we moved toward the door, I felt the shadow of dread loom large once more, uncertainty clawing at my heart. What if we reached that diner and he wasn't there? What if he was lost again, further than we could catch him? With every step, it became achingly clear this journey was much more than just a search for Tommy. It was about standing on the precipice of family, love, and duty, intertwined in an emotional maze riddled with the sharp edges of regret and hope. Just as we were about to exit, a crowded waiting room suddenly hushed as someone called my name. I turned around, and the grip of uncertainty shifted once again as I locked eyes with someone I never expected to see in this bleakness. It was Evan, the very person I had desperately hoped would never come into the picture, yet in this chaotic moment, I was left grappling with the current that threatened to drown us all. Evan stood there, his expression torn between compassion and something darker. The tension intensified, overshadowing everything else, as I felt the ground beneath me shift precariously. With a breath caught in my throat, I wondered, was he here to help us or to cast another shadow over the fragile path we were desperately trying to carve? Evan took a hesitant step forward, uncertainty swirling in his eyes as they darted between my mother, Mia, Dr. Lee, and me. Time felt suspended, the air thick with unspoken words. I could sense the heartbreak mixed with hope in that small gathering, the weight of our future hinging on the decisions made within these charged moments. Jordan, he began, voice laced with trepidation, I heard about Tommy. I want to help. I checked his usual spots but didn't find him, and I thought, why are you here, Evan? I couldn't mask the edge of anger creeping into my voice. All I could envision was him dragging along the baggage of our past like a souvenir from a hard-fought battle. What do you possibly have to offer? I hated myself for how harshly the question snapped from my lips, but I couldn't afford another fracture, especially now. I'm not here to hurt you, he assured, the sincerity in his tone colliding with my skepticism. Two still care about you and Tommy. I know we have our history, and I haven't been for either of you in a long time, but I want to make it right, no matter how long it takes. The tension in the room shifted, my heart battling against the emotions that swirled within me. Could I let him in? Could I dare hope that whatever hurt had passed between us might transform into something constructive? Just behind my uncertainty loomed the vision of Tommy, vulnerability etched into his small features, a canvas painted with the fears he fought against daily. Before I could respond, a distant echo of voices broke the pregnant silence, officers preparing to leave in pursuit of the lead. The urgency of the moment snapped me back to reality, the need for a decision pressing against me like a vice. Dr. Lee took a step forward, asserting his presence as a steadying force. We don't have time for this. If he can help, we need to branch out. Tommy's safety is the priority, the diner is only a few blocks away. I'll go with you, Evan offered. The mix of desperation and determination in his expression glimmered through, and though the distrust simmered within me, I could feel my resolve beginning to crack. As I looked at Mia, my mother, and Dr. Lee, a chorus of vulnerability rose among us, stitching our narrative into something larger than a single rift or hurt, something that resembled hope. With a heavy heart, I finally nodded, allowing Evan into this fragile circle. You can come. But know this, I'm not interested in any drama. This is about finding Tommy. That I understand, Evan said softly, a flicker of relief crossing his face. He stepped aside, and together, we surged into the night, determined to alter our fate, desperate for that flickering light of hope that flickered dimly on the horizon of our turmoil. The streets rushed by as we moved toward the diner, a collective spirit bound by our grief and determination. Each step was a beckoning toward possibility, a flourishing essence of family still struggling to emerge from the ruins of our past. When we arrived at the diner, a dimly lit spot smattered with the swirl of patrons deep into their meals and laughter. It felt like stepping into another world entirely, the warmth inside echoing the fierce beating of my heart. With Evan close behind, we rushed to the counter, the diner's waitress turning to regard us curiously. Can I help you? She asked, her demeanor shifting as she noticed our urgency. And my brother, Tommy. Has he been here? I asked breathlessly, fear bleeding into every syllable. The waitress scanned the area, a small knot of concern crossing her brow. I'm not sure. I think he was here earlier, but I haven't seen him in a while. I could check with the cook. The uncertainty pulled tight in my chest, each moment that passed stretching every nerve within me as the world around us swirled on, oblivious to our turmoil. In that suffocating silence, time slowed to a crawl, my eyes darting around the bustling diner, searching for any sign of him. But beneath the din of chatter and clinking of cups, I felt the heaviness settle back over me, like a dark cloud threatening a storm. A voice rose abruptly from behind me, a voice I knew too well. Jordan. It sliced through the noise like a knife, familiar yet threading fear along my spine. I turned, and there he was. Tommy stood just outside the entrance, looking unsteady on his feet and entirely overwhelmed, uncertainty and vulnerability etched across his expression. Tommy! I shouted, the relief flooding my body, coursing through my veins in waves as I pushed my way toward him. You scared us. His gaze flickered not just towards me, but toward Evan, then back to our mother and even Mia, who stood just behind me, all hidden under a veil of emotional chaos. I needed to get out, he said, his voice a tremor against the din of reality playing out in front of him. But you're supposed to be with us, Afe. I reached for him, drawing him into an embrace, the warmth of our connection anchoring me against the last remnants of panic. You scared us so much, you have to come back. We want to help you. His small frame shook against me, but as he pulled away, a mixture of anguish and relief came rushing back as he stood before the 4 of USA reunion that brimmed with the hope of something new. "I was just so tired of being sick, tired of waiting," he admitted, the weight of his honest vulnerability bringing tears to my eyes. "I know, buddy. But we're in this together, okay?" I said, wrapping my hands around his shoulders, grounding him while my heart thudded wildly across the chasm of emotions raging in the diner. Yet even amid relief and connection, I felt the shadows pressing in around us, awaiting our next move. Turning toward Evan, I said, "We're here for you, Tommy. We're all here together." Something unspoken hung in the air, a bridge slowly forming between the pieces of our fractured family in the shape of shared love, determination, and a culmination of courage. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope didn't conceal itself behind anguish, it emerged quietly, asserting its presence in the most beautiful way. And as I looked into Tommy's eyes, I began to understand. Indeed, the most powerful connections are forged in the fires of pain and collective purpose, the radiant light of family flickering, yet illuminating the shadows that had once dimmed us all. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, facing the uncertainty ahead. The choices we made could loom larger than the past we carried, and together, we would weave a narrative of healing that demanded to be honored. In that moment, with my heart full of renewed courage, I whispered to Tommy, "No matter the future, we will face it together. Always." And just like that, everything shifted. The delicate tapestry of our lives began to intertwine anew, stitched together by the unbreakable bonds of love, hope, and family, radiant against the backdrop of our struggles, a beautifully poignant symphony echoing through the trials we had endured. Each note a promise, each pause a reminder that in the depths of despair lay the seeds of something extraordinary. As we stepped back into the world, the glow of possibility wrapped around us. Perhaps we could carve out a path even through the shadows. It was in that uncertainty where we discovered our strength, the power of the human heart to forgive, to heal, and to love fiercely, over and over again. Because in the end, it was always love that lit the way.